Always takes two goes, seems to. Welcome. Um, yeah, I can see you now. Hi, Amanda. Welcome. Thanks for joining me this evening.
Yes.
For everybody watching, this is Amanda. I'm going to hand it over to you, Amanda, and you can introduce yourself and say where you are based and that.
Well, I'm Amanda Hughes and I'm based in Dublin, in the city centre. I'm a herbalist, a Chinese herbalist and acupuncturist.
Perfect. That's lovely. Thanks, Amanda. And for any of you who don't know, I'm Helen Falvey. I'm AcuGlow Acupuncture, and I'm based here in the centre of Galway city centre. Today is World Menopause Day, and October is Menopause Awareness Month. So we decided we would do a live, or Amanda graciously agreed to join me for more of these lives. I'm always getting people to join for these, and we thought it would be really nice to speak a little bit more about menopause. We earlier this year, Shane joined me and we introduced menopause, and we spoke a lot about the main symptoms. So we're going to continue on that conversation, and we're going to speak about some other things related to perimenopause and menopause. And just before we get started, language is always evolving, and we're always trying to do better as we evolve as practitioners. So we will be doing our best to use inclusive language in recognition that not everyone going through menopause identifies as a woman. So we'll be taking non-binary and trans folks into account by using people where we can and where we remember to, but we might sometimes say women. All right. So with that, we might start off, and I know we're going to introduce the perimenopause, the terms first. So perimenopause, it's leading menopause, menopause being what marks a year after the final menstrual period. But a lot of people would sometimes talk about menopause in terms of the symptoms all through. So it's and that's fine too as well. So like we kind of keep that in mind with the kind of the more kind of common terms. But so for our discussion this evening, we're going to start talking about perimenopause and signs of perimenopause. And yeah, I'll let you say a little bit more there, Amanda, and we can go through a couple of the main symptoms. And I know we wanted to talk about UTIs and prevention, because that's really important, and it isn't often spoken about. And we're trying to raise awareness of that. So I'll let you speak a little on that.
Well, people can be a bit confused about menopause and perimenopause, and
Sure.
the symptom, basically. And sorry, I keep going in and out. And the thing is that blood tests alone are really only relevant after you've not had a period for a year, because the problem with perimenopause, of course, is that your the estrogen levels and FSH levels are soaring and crashing, and that's why you get the symptoms. The symptoms are as a result of that soaring and crashing, before eventually it all settles down. And once you haven't had a period for a year, then you are deemed to be postmenopausal. The period of waiting for the period to stop, that is menopausal. And so it can get a bit kind of confusing. Generally, people just talk about menopause. They never talk about perimenopause or postmenopause either.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, so we wanted to talk about, so I'm just going to run through, because people were asking, well, how might they know? And we consider it, somebody was saying, oh, so somebody, I invited people to submit some questions, and somebody said, oh, if I just had one symptom, would I know? You could have one symptom, or you could have no symptoms. It depends on how you go into it, and some folks, they won't have many symptoms. They will sail all the way to menopause, and it'll be very easy. And then on the flip side of that, the contrast is some folks will have a lot of symptoms. So Yeah, so it really it's not always easy to say, but some of the indicators might be new changes, and there might be a new shortened cycle. There might be migraines. Okay, like, if you've never had migraines, you start having migraines, and you're coming to your late 30s, early 40s. You start watching for all these signs and things. There's signs, and maybe you're starting into perimenopause because you're getting too closer to the age. A very new, very heavy period. Some people describe it as flooding because it kind of takes them by surprise, and that's what the surges of estrogen. Getting actually hot flashes. This is kind of a part of it. New breast tenderness. I didn't want to forget anything, so I made some notes here. And then getting night sweats, especially coming up to the period. So,
Yeah.
so those ones are good ones. Let's just sort of start thinking. I mean, you could start having a little bit of all of these. You could start having one or two of them, and you could start thinking about ways now at the stage. It would be an opportunity. It's not all bad. It's an opportunity to start taking better care of your health, and yeah, it's not all bad news. Basically, we wanted to
Yeah.
try and emphasize.
I, I think that perimenopause and all of those symptoms, it's a bit of a wake up call on, on things like lifestyle, because you can do an awful lot to control the symptoms to actually in ultimately get a better life, better sleep quality, better energy, better everything. I think before the menopause, one can effectively glide along because everything is, everything is working. And then once the periods start to become erratic, or you start getting odd symptoms, and look at ways in which you can improve it. Cutting down on stress levels, which one always hears huge amounts about, is actually really key to the improvement of a lot of menopausal symptoms and long-term old age health issues. There's no reason why post-menopause your and energy levels shouldn't be as good as they were when you're a teenager, and your quality of life shouldn't be absolutely fantastic. But it is down to doing the prep and the homework, and the homework often does revolve around things like eating more consciously, and eating better, and reducing stress, and
Yeah, that's
eating.
I think stress is such a big one because the response to stress is a little bit more delicate. That there's a more stress response, and we're more sensitive to it. So it becomes imperative that we really like watch what our stressors are and take steps, because it kind of becomes important. We sail by at a younger age, and these things are less significant and they're less pressing, but it becomes more important and becomes something we need to prioritize.
Yeah. But this,
The other
yeah, it's such a kind of, it creates a double-edged sword of, the flight fright um, syndrome, and then also it also increases cortisol levels that affects, insulin resistance, and you're then in this whole vicious cycle that can lead to adrenal fatigue, and that covers things like exhaustion, irritability, insomnia. We all know those symptoms, and so what you eat can also be a trigger to how you behave emotionally. So
Yes.
reducing sugar and being very sugar aware in terms of even excess fruit. Unless you've had a very active day, you shouldn't need an awful lot of sugar in any form, whether it's a slice of healthy brown bread. You shouldn't need, unless you've had a really good lot of exercise that's going to burn off all of those carbs, because otherwise it can lead to other symptoms apart from weight gain.
Yeah, it's certainly the minding insulin resistance is definitely something that we take into mind, and we just ask people. Like I always say to people that exercise is brilliant for heightening insulin sensitivity. So I always would say it's really good to be active, and that you can have a certain amount of carbohydrate, but not overload on it as well. And according to activity, like you mentioned, but rather than imposing like strict rules on it. But again, everyone has their own approach, and people have to find what works for them. I would also encourage people to reduce alcohol, because alcohol has an effect. If estrogen is surging, it stops estrogen from being properly removed from the system. It keeps it in the body a little bit more. So alcohol is one to keep in mind as well, to keep it reduced. So that was another one I would suggest. And then the circadian rhythm rather becomes important as well. And even just if you, I mean, some people can't help it, their work requires them to work at night and things like that. But if you don't have to do that, getting up early in the day and getting sunlight early in the day, and making sure to reduce blue light at night time. We always hear this advice, but people don't always apply it. So it's just a reminder for that one as well.
Yeah. I think the little rest in the afternoon, even if it's just 15 minutes lying on the floor of your office or in your car, in the car park, makes an absolutely, it just makes a huge difference. From a point of view, it makes an absolutely enormous difference to your yin quality, which is the moistening, nourishing, and cooling qualities. And they're the qualities that are so challenged by, and that little rest can literally be a lifesaver, because the effect it has on those yin qualities. It can reduce night sweats. It can help with, all the other side issues that aren't generally discussed, like the urinogenital problems that occur with menopause. Makes quite a big difference. And then, of course, see, coffee in Chinese medicine is really drying. It's a diuretic, so you're just drying out all your cells. And when things get dried out, they can be inclined to overheat, especially in menopause times, because you're a little bit overheated.
Yeah. Again, with coffee, some people are quite attached to their coffee, and they love it, and it's part of their day and things like that. So we work with reducing or picking an alternative, and seeing how badly it is affecting them on an individual level as well. Some people can have a little bit, can have up and still feel okay with it, but it is something to keep in mind, that if it is causing heightened anxiety and all of the rest, and it's something to test and try, and see what happens when they reduce it or take it out. And oh, I see someone else joining here. So yeah, it is something to think about, and it is when we start telling people reduce sugar, reduce alcohol, reduce coffee, they don't always love to, all the fun things. You're taking away all the fun things from me. But it increases quality of life, and it can, and like we say, it's a pivotal point. It's an opportunity to get in and prevent issues later on. So it can be worth that effort. And then we might as well mention acupuncture and herbs as well, because they do brilliant things to help ease the transition of perimenopause as well. I've always seen good results, and I'm sure you also have as well.
Yeah, it really helps. The acupuncture is absolutely brilliant, of course, for stress, and there are particular points that reduce the hot flushes and reduce night sweating. It works absolutely brilliantly. From a herbal point of view, there are any number of different approaches that can be taken to reduce a lot of the symptoms, and there are different, there are lots of different herbs, and it makes a really big difference. With a herbal remedy, you can put in, there can be up to about 25 different herbs in any one remedy, so you or formula, so you can actually cover an awful lot of things, like you can cover weight issue, the vaginal dryness, all of that type of thing. And a lot of the herbs actually, like fenugreek, which is a kind of just a popular herb that's used for vaginal dryness, is actually a Chinese herb. And then cinnamon, that's used for lowering insulin resistance, which is also a problem with menopause, is just an everyday herb that's regularly used in Chinese medicine.
That's,
So
that's a
things,
lovely
but food,
explanation. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you for explaining all
a
of
lot
that.
of time food is, I can't emphasize how important food and diet is. People take herbs, but actually herbs aren't necessarily a medication. They're no more of a medication than food, and there is that saying, let food be thy medicine. So,
Yes.
if you have a diet of, if you're perimenopausal, okay, and you go out you've had a really busy day running around like a lunatic, and you've had 2 coffees, and you go out, you have 2 glass wine because you're so, hyped up, and then you launch into a chicken curry, you're going to be sweating at
Yeah,
night.
you're going to be sweating. Yeah.
If you have a very calm kind of day and you end up just drinking kind of loads of water and maybe having a nice juice, you preferably a vegetable juice, and you have a relatively calm day, and you have just an ordinary meat and 2 veg, or just pulses and 2 veg diet, which would be even better for menopause for a different reason, which I'll explain. But you will notice that night, it's very, with diet, the results are very immediate. They're not sustained. There were studies done on Japanese women who, I think in Japanese there isn't a word for menopause or hot flushes, because they just don't, it's not part of their culture to even think about it. And they eat a lot of tofu and soya products, and they have very few hot flushes, historically. But the minute they changed their diet, they did a study, and they start getting hot flushes. So diet is the result you see is pretty immediate. But if you eat very heavy, if you overtax your body, you're not going to have the reserves to be able to deal with those estrogen crashes and surges. And that alone as well can cause hot flushes. So eating very heavy meals and eating foods that can be quite difficult to digest, like if you've got an intolerance to a food, that can cause hot flushes. And also if eating excessive amounts of heavy foods like meats causes hot flushes. Now, meats are really important if you've got heavy bleeding, because you need to replace the iron and the B vitamin, particularly B12. But excessive amounts will definitely cause problems, and it'll be pretty immediate.
Yeah, it's certainly about finding the right balance when it comes
Mm.
to, getting the nutrients from and eating too much. So definitely a balance to be struck there, and that's a really good point you've made there. We were talking about this. We've had some chats before we came on this talks, and we both feel the same about menopausal hormonal therapy. We really open. We consider it. It's another tool. It's another way to treat it, and some folks will benefit, and some will, for whatever reason, they might, it might be contraindicated, or they might just prefer not to try it. But we say, oh, if you think it's something to try, discuss with your doctor, especially because the topically applied estrogen for issues in the vaginal area, they are they don't have as much of an effect as taking the hormones internally, and they can be a good solution for these local symptoms. So that's something to discuss with your GP and find out a bit more about if you're experiencing these symptoms. And it's a case of using all of the tools available, using the nutrition tips, bringing it down availing of acupuncture if you need, trying Chinese herbs if you need some more help. Any of these, all of these things, and you could be very fortunate as well. Only need minimal interventions. So I
And
just wanted to make sure we mention that because I know it's sometimes people think, oh, it's one or the other, but we can pick the best of everything. So,
no, and sometimes the journey, the HRT journey can be, it can be quite a long one. There are so many HRT different products out there, and sometimes you just have to explore and keep persevering. But the thing about the menopause, particularly, in Chinese medicine, they look at the menopause as being a portal, and it's a portal into either a better health or a worse health. And it's like everything, you can open the door, and it's how you go through it and how you intend to, what you intend doing on the other side. And so it is, I can't emphasize, it's a real health opportunity. And HRT is absolutely vital for some women. It's a godsend. And but for the vast majority, of women, they shouldn't use it as a sticking plaster, because because they really need to prepare for going through the portal into their life after periods.
yeah, yeah, that's it's beautifully expressed, Amanda. Yeah, thank you. Was there anything else we want to
We
talk
were
about?
going to we were going to discuss the things that people don't discuss, which is the urinogenital symptoms,
Yes, yeah,
vaginal dryness,
yeah,
and the atrophic
issue.
vaginal
Yeah,
bladder infections.
yeah. So you wanted to speak from a prevention standpoint. You wanted to speak first about the UTIs.
Yeah, well, basically, what happens is that the generally there's, estrogen is produced, and it protects the whole urinogenital area while we have periods, because obviously we have periods because we've got sufficient levels of estrogen. But once the estrogen diminishes, the we don't have that kind of protection. But also the skin, the vaginal skin, can get really, really thin, and so you can, and this tissue can get really, really sensitized. So you need to be, and it can get very uncomfortable, and also, it can affect one's kind of, basically one's sex life, but also it can lead you to becoming more prone for UTIs. And all of these things affect people differently. The UTI mightn't be your thing, but it might be, you might have vaginal dryness instead. And one of the things, say, just to talk about UTIs, is if you have a UTI, you really do have to go off to the GP. Don't be sitting on the shelf thinking it's going to be going away. It won't, and it'll get worse. So you really do need to go to the GP. And but a big thing on, if you are frequently getting UTIs, is of course prevention. And I know they say drink water, and you feel as if you're going to explode because you drink so much water. But if you feel that the very initial sensations of a UTI, the cranberry tablets are really good. Cranberry juice isn't any good. Go and get the cranberry tablets that have no sugar in them, are really good. There's obviously Sister Pure, and there's D-Manos, but there's also just a home remedy. If you're stuck up a mountain in Kerry, there's a home remedy, which is it's a Chinese remedy. It's a British remedy, colonial British remedy, but I think it's originally Chinese. And what you do is you boil up barley water, and you drink the liquid off the barley water. So if rice is like 2 parts water to 1 part rice, you do 4 to 5 parts water to the 1 part rice, and
Barley,
it's
isn't it? Yeah.
awful. but you really get drinking it until you can get either to the GP or to the health food shop for the cranberry, cistopurin, and the D-mannose. That's what I would advise.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that is good advice. What you said, to act as quickly as possible. That is so important, because if a UTI is unchecked, it will progress. It will worsen, and you'll end up with needing more medication, and
yeah. And
possibly
then
the
we
tissues.
were you were discussing about today. It was such an interesting conversation about the importance of the microbiome.
Yes, yeah. And like we always try and say, oh, let's try and avoid antibiotics, but sometimes it might be necessary to take it if the UTIs were becoming an issue. But if we can mind the microbiome post that, that helps with perimenopausal symptoms. Um, it was just another kind of signpost in the healthy passage through the portal that we were speaking about before. So yeah, it's just one other thing, along with all those things. There's
Yeah.
one final thing. Oh yeah, so we were gonna. So you also wanted to, you mentioned just before speaking on UTIs, you were saying about vaginal dryness and the atrophy of tissues. So normally we say topical estrogen, or would you say anything else for that?
Well, there's a very good topical estrogen called Vagifem,
Okay.
and I've had patients who've had, have issues with it, but it's, if you're very bad vaginal dryness and you really do have a tendency towards UTIs, it's actually worth considering. And, if it's affecting your sex life, it really is worth considering. And the thing is, it's a very, very, very low estrogen content. And they advise it for, they advise it, it's perfectly safe for some cancer sufferers. Obviously, it's prescribed by the GP, so you'll have had that, the conversation with the GP. But it's a pessary and it's very easily used. But there's also another, if you don't want to go down that road, what is also really, there's another couple of things. What is very good, they found that women with vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy have very low levels of lactobacillus in their vaginas. And so you can actually get a brilliant pessary called Intrafresh, and it's by BioCare. And it really is very good. And I would strongly recommend trying that. Another thing that you can do, but it's very messy, and I'm dubious about its success rate, is you can make your own cream with fenugreek. So what you do is you just cover the fenugreek seeds with oil, and you simmer them until the oil takes on the color of the fenugreek. And then you mix that oil into beeswax. You can Google a good bees
Yeah.
cream thing, but it's messy.
Yeah, it sounds it sounds messy.
Messy work.
If it works, great. But again, if people are not sure, if you're not 100% sure, or if it doesn't have, a lot of success behind it, or a lot of people, maybe a lot of people aren't trying it.
Work.
Yeah, but it's a good thing to note. But yeah, there is a
Yeah.
microbiome in the vaginal area as well, and that is something to keep in mind. So that is a really good point. We've one question coming in here. What about postmenopausal treatment? So usually the worst of it is over. So once you're postmenopause, uh, even even the things like people talk about brain fog and things like that. I think people worry about that going through menopause as well. It seems like there's a reorganization of the neurons and the connections, and then that seems to clear, and that when you no longer have the surges of menopause. So I wonder if you're still online, and if you wanted to add to your question, any symptom in particular, or if I'll just give them a second if they want to add to that question. Or was there anything else that comes to mind post-menopausal?
Well, perhaps they mean things like, osteoporosis and
Oh, that's a good point.
heart issues,
Yeah,
that type of thing. Well, certainly, I absolutely think that everyone should go off and get a DEXA scan
yeah, I
and
reckon that to
see
people
where
too.
you are, because you just don't know. You just don't know unless you have a DEXA scan. And there are an awful lot of, I would go to a nutritionist before taking, I'd get lots of advice, but I definitely go to a nutritionist and look at a lot of supplements. And um, that is important after menopause. And if you are, certainly you need to ensure that you're having enough magnesium and calcium in your diet. And the thing about milk, all right, is always a bit controversial. At the end is milk. The Department of Health recommends a pint of milk products a day. So if you have, say, 4 or 5 cups of tea with milk in it and a bowl of cereal, that's your milk products gone before you've even put any butter on your toast. And they recommend that as a max, the pint. And out of that, a third of it, you will get a third of your daily calcium intake. A big thing for calcium, obviously, is weight-bearing exercises are really important. But equally, a big thing is, again, reducing stress levels. Huge. Don't drink coffee. Don't drink diuretics. They're a big no-no for osteoporosis. So it's too much salt and sugar. So you're just back again to having arrived on the other side of the portal, and now you have osteoporosis, and so you just have to be very good.
It's something we all have to consider, even if you have sailed through perimenopause and menopause. Osteoporosis is something that can come in advanced age. They actually added hair loss and anxiety. Now, straight away, when I see hair loss, I see hair loss as being something that would suggest checking the thyroid and checking for iron deficiency. The with perimenopause, sometimes there can be a hypothyroidism coming in, and hypothyroidism shares some of the symptoms of perimenopause, but there would be hair loss as well. And they're also saying anxiety. So the anxiety seems to come up with the surging and dropping estrogen of perimenopause. It can sometimes stay on beyond menopause. Well, I find acupuncture to be a brilliant treatment for anxiety. We treat people of all ages that have anxiety, and people tend to respond really well. Would you like to
Mm.
say anything else there, Amanda? Maybe about hair loss? Anything that I didn't cover?
Yeah, hair loss is, well, it can be, yeah, it's an increase in the androgens,
Yes.
which, as well as as a result, the hypothyroidism.
Yeah,
So
because it might not be thyroid, but it could, yeah, it could be.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so it can be associated with insulin resistance, and it can also be associated with kind of increased weight gain around the waist. And so again, you're back to looking at keeping calm around the cortisol levels, and also eating, being careful about what you eat to try and prevent insulin resistance, and is really important. And that all has contributing factors. Interestingly, there's a homemade Chinese remedy. It's what they call a kitchen remedy, and it really does work. And it's basically where you get fresh ginger, and you can whiz it up in your food processor, or you can finely grate it, and you squeeze out the juice, and you apply that juice to your hair, to where you're losing the hair. But it works brilliantly and really, really well if you can get what they call either a plum flower hammer, or a 7-star hammer. And these are tiny little, very lightweight hammers with acupuncture needles in them. And you very, very, like, really lightly tap your head to just make it a bit pink. You don't cut the scalp. And then you do that every night, every second night for really for as long as it takes. It does get results. I know a young guy, I used to teach in a college, and I know this young guy who his brother had you know, the male associated alopecia, and his hair grew back, and he had really thick hair, and it does work. So that is worth trying. But at the end of the day, if you need to look at lifestyle. Hair usually is always to do with lifestyle and underlying hormone levels. And hormone levels are always, you know, they're either a causative factor to a lifestyle issue, or they are as a result of a lifestyle issue often.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a great response. There are no more questions right now, and I think we have covered everything that we had set out to. Was there anything else, Amanda?
No, I think we have. I was just looking somewhere, and there's a great little thing, and I'd love somebody to try it.
Go ahead.
So
we'll
you can report back. And it's for hot flushes.
Okay.
And equal parts of Roman chamomile, sage, basil, thyme, and clary sage. Do you want me to read that again?
Yeah, we'll have to round up all these notes. We've both added a lot of things in this, so we'll maybe round notes, and maybe people can send an email if they want all of the things we've mentioned tonight. I know the replay will be available, but that sounds really interesting. Read it one more time, because some of them are familiar.
Roman chamomile.
Okay.
Basil, thyme, and clary sage. They're all essential oils.
Okay.
And you basically mix up a little kind of master bottle. So you put equal parts of each of them into it. And then you take 15 drops of this blend, and you blend it in 6 teaspoons of, you can use almond oil, but you know what? Honestly, sunflower oil is just as good. And as a carrier oil, whatever you do, don't use it neat. Really don't use it neat.
Always
well, yeah, you get a nasty headache anyway, but using it neat. But the thing is that it's meant to be absolutely brilliant for hot flushes. And so, you know, you can have it in your handbag. You know, the little article I read said to put it on tissue. And, you know, if you're kind of feel one coming up, you just pull your tissue out and you inhale it. And apparently it stops them dead.
Wow. Yeah, that is something to try.
It doesn't prevent them, but it stops the immediate effect. So I'd love to try it.
Yeah, that's something to try, definitely. And then we can find out, we can, you know, hear back from people. Then if they try it and it works, we can start recommending it. Oh, I see some people have joined. We're about to finish up, but the replay will be available to everyone who has just joined. So yeah, we might leave it at that. So thank you again so much, Amanda. You have shared a wealth of knowledge, and it's been really great to talk to you.
Great. Lovely talking with you, Helen.
Lovely talking. Okay, Amanda, goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.